I think we're both very pleased, me especially, that we got a win for both Ipswich and Wolves this week. That's going to be Matt's moment. Let's lead off with that. But first of all, good morning, mate.
Good morning. A very good morning for the Ipswich fans, I must say as well. Let's talk about the relegation sandwich. Let's get right into it, Ben. Massive, massive wins for Ipswich and Wolves. And, everyone's got a win now, like you say. And it's actually great because they've all got a chance now. I mean, it's bunched them up together. I mean, the teams that are above the bottom three are now looking over their shoulder. I mean, we'll look at both Ipswich and Wolves in isolation, but it certainly made it a more compelling battle where they've all been drawn into it level. Well, they're not all level on points, but you get my point that they're all much closer together. There isn't massive gaps forming. We've said previously that we're looking at a bottom six here. There is that potential. Maybe if West Ham have a poor run, they might fall into the equation. But I think we're looking at the 6 teams that are under a point per game. And let's start with Wolves then, Ben, because what a win against Southampton. It was an absolutely massive game, and I stand by it that if they'd have lost that game, I think this international break would have been it for Gary O'Neill. I really do. That would have been a massive result for Southampton, and it could have, buried Wolves alive. And they had to put in a big performance. And obviously they got the win, but I'm really pleased with them getting a clean sheet as well. I know they conceded and the goal was disallowed, but that's been one of my concerns for Wolves this season, defensive issues. And, if you look at the stats on this game, it looks like Wolves had the lion's share of it, but always Southampton are going to have a lot of possession. The stats can be a bit misleading with Southampton sometimes because they like the ball. It does look like Southampton were in the game, I guess. Credit to Wolves for keeping the clean sheet. Got the early goal, really crucial that. And then obviously once they got the second, it looked like they were going to be home and dry. And a massive result for Wolves. It brings them back up the table a bit, off the bottom. You've got Palace, who slipped up this week. And then we're going to talk about Ipswich, because Ipswich have now jumped out of the bottom 3. And whereas the Wolves game, you would have made them favourites to get the result, even if they hadn't won yet this season. I didn't see this result coming for Ipswich. I know Tottenham have been up and down, but I don't want to make this about Tottenham. This is full credit to Ipswich Town here. A really, really good win. And the game plan was perfect, Ben. I think they had to make sure they got themselves in front and frustrated Tottenham. And even at 1-0, a team that's down at the bottom could think, let's just try and defend a 1-0. I think you had to go and get the second. You had to build that buffer. And you did. The Smodic's goal, we'll come on to that later. It's a really, really clever finish. Delap, good pursuit of getting that second one over the line.
It's a fire.
And I've got to say, Ben, I'm sure you were feeling the same way. When Tottenham pulled one back, you were thinking, oh gosh, in the last 2 games, Ipswich have conceded late goals.
In there, Matt? Can I come in there? What we saw from Ipswich was actual bastardery and housery and a strategic player sitting down for a tactical message maybe to be passed to the team, and fouls drawn and the ball given to the dribbly Hutchinson to get up the pitch. And I think, and this is great to see, that obviously they were 2-0 up at Brentford, Matt, and kind of played emotionally, and Harry Clark kind of jumps in and then a goal's back, and all of a sudden Brentford are smashing 4 in during the game and there's a penalty and 10 men and all that. This looked a lot calmer and a lot more savvy. It does. We've always said Kieran McKenna learns, and he's a manager that's not stubborn, and you can see what his learning is. But great to see that, the complete flip from what happened at Brentford, where it was, and as much as no one likes it when it's done to their team, especially at home, to hear the Spurs fans saying, oh, they were horrible, Ipswich, they managed the game and they saw it out, it's probably a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, me, I'd much rather result than them walking away and saying, "Oh, Ipswich played well, but I'm glad we beat them." You had to. I mean, I think the way you got to look at it is you don't want to play a basketball game against Tottenham for 90 minutes because
No.
they just blitz you on the counter attack, and maybe that's what we've spoken about before with Ipswich Town. They're learning the Premier League. They're learning their lessons, because we spoke about the 0-0 at Brighton and we gave them credit. And then when they lost 4-3 to Brentford, we were like, what's that about? We thought they were meant to be good defensively. And like you say, similar. They go 2-0 up away from home and they've learned, let's not make this a basketball match. Let's try and break up the play a bit. Good defensive work and some good goalkeeping at times. And they kept themselves they kept themselves in front. Like I say, I was a bit nervous when that first one went in from Bentancur. I was like, oh, geez, I really, really hope the Ipswich fans can get this result.
In the 96th minute.
Yeah, it's just that those last two results give you nightmares with the late goals against Leicester and Brentford. So I am honestly delighted for the Ipswich fans. And because it's so tight down there, they've pulled themselves out of the bottom three. It's only their first win of the season, but they've climbed out of the bottom three. A massive result, even a draw. If you'd have offered a draw before the game, I know you'd have taken it. But obviously, if Spurs had equalised in the last minute, you would have been down about it. Just a massive result to get the win, because wins are so huge in the Premier League. We've said before that Ipswich are collecting draws nicely, but you need your 8 or 9 wins, and then you put the draws on top. You get to 35 points. Sorry,
and we said as well, Matt. Sorry to interrupt, mate. Sorry, we've said as well. You need to You need to have a combination of sensible wins, but you need to have a few shock wins in there, don't you? And let's be frank. Watching Ipswich this season, you've kind of thought the only chance they've got of winning is against a team that, they're comparatively okay against. So, i.e. not Tottenham. And everything's got to be online and go right. But I think that'll be a big thing for Ipswich fans. Of course, I am one. This idea that you can go and you can beat Tottenham. So when you've drawn against Fulham and Villa and you're kind of like, oh, well, we were lucky to have that point. It's like, well, no, perhaps those games can be won later in the season. Do you see what I'm saying? To get to your 8-9 wins, there's literally not enough games in the bottom 5 to get them. You need the shock wins, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk about 8 or 9 wins. And if we say that between Christmas and New Year is the halfway point of the season when you've played 19 games, you preferably need 3-4 wins before that point. And we're closing in on Christmas already. So you've ticked that first one off. And bear in mind as well, you've already played your first game against Southampton and Leicester. Those games on paper are the ones you're most likely to win. You didn't win those. Okay, you didn't lose them. You drew them both. So now you've got to tick off wins where you can. And you really hope the Ipswich fans, despite this 2-week international break, can keep that positivity bubbling for that massive game against Amurim's Manchester United. So that will be an interesting one. But honestly, so happy for the Ipswich fans. It proves any people wrong that were starting to think, oh no, they haven't got it in them, because that was a statement win as well as just a win. Wolves, massive win because it was a 6-pointer. So they've both climbed up. They're the big winners this week. And then, like we say, Southampton lost, Palace lost, Leicester lost, Everton drew 0-0. It was a bit of a dud, wasn't it, with West Ham? Keeps them moving, I guess, a little bit. So, yeah, Ipswich and Wolves, the big winners this week. Massive congratulations to them.
Can I just come in on Wolves before we round out this segment, Matt? So we'd outlined, okay, here the games get a bit easier. And then we're a bit disappointed at 2 draws. But we always say this, you and I, Matt, that a run of draws, stick a defeat on the end, horrible run, stick a win on the end, and all of a sudden you say, okay, 3 unbeaten, 5 points in 3. You mentioned about the defence, because they don't have problems scoring goals, do they? 2 goals in each of the last 3. I know we're going to talk about Cunha, spoiler alert, in a later segment, but Cunha, Larson, Sarabia, that front 3, have 7 in the last 5 games. So they've got goals, and I totally echo your point of, if you can, not even clean sheets, Matt, throw in an under 1.5, a 0 or a 1, and some results will still start coming. And just to finally round this out, Matt, to start December, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester, they play back-to-back the 4 teams currently above the relegation sandwich zone dotted line. They have a chance week after week to pull one of them in by beating them. So, Ipswich and Wolves off the mark. We'll clip that out and we'll stick that down Matt SB's channel. So if you're watching over there, head over to the Benjamin Bloom football channel. A bit confusing depending on where you're watching. And you can see the whole of the Premier League Check-In podcast.